Welcome to the Stewart Squared podcast. We've got a great set of talking points that we will completely ignore as we follow whatever train of thought is most interesting at the time. But the two first ones are that you've developed a theory that the CEO appointed after the founder in a big company never works out. And the other interesting talking point is about consultants and why consultants never work out. But let's start with the history of consultants. When did McKinsey and all the big five become a thing, and why is there so much tension between them and the tech world?
Let's constrain that just to the tech industry because, the big consultants, and I'm not sure there are 5 of them left, but the big consultants have a range of consultant business that they do in different industries. But in the tech business, there's this distinction in tech, which is in order to be a successful CEO, you have to understand the technology. And consultants are trained to be independent of any particular industry, not have any particular domain knowledge. It breaks down inside of a consultancy that certain people develop expertise in a particular domain, but they're consultants and they're not running a company, so their job is to provide advice. So the first level of this is my own bias about consultants, which I'll make clear, which is consultants tell you to do what you should have done in the first place. So a consultant doesn't solve the problem of why a company doesn't do it in the first place. Usually that's a result of it's gotten really big, it has multiple kinds of businesses, and its sort of mission has become diffuse. And so you have to hire consultants to tell you what to do in this business or that business. And so if you look at MBA programs, and the two kind of top of mind are Stanford, GSB, Graduate School of Business, or Harvard, what the hell's it called? Business School, HBS. So Harvard, the joke is Harvard put the BS in HBS. There's no equivalent joke for Stanford, but these are the two that are kind of considered top of line. And there's sort of 3 reasons people go to business school who know why they're going to business school. There are plenty of people who don't. And one is, in your graduating class in business school, these are the best of the best, right? Yeah. So you start out your career, if you do business school right after your undergrad, knowing the people who are going to be running stuff going forward. And so it's a great network to have. This is particularly true at Stanford, particularly in technology companies. But the second thing is that business schools train you to do something particular, and it's really all about analytics, analysis. So Harvard's famous for doing case studies, and they'll study something, document it, they write these case studies kind of independently of the classes, and then the professors use them to teach classes depending on what they're teaching. And there are some of these cases that are truly famous. One I remember, I can't give you the details, is a company that was growing potatoes and wanted to sell French fries to McDonald's. And so they studied McDonald's in detail and discovered that McDonald's had French fries that are a particular width. So they optimized for, once they'd grown the potato, for making exactly what McDonald's wants, and then set up a distribution system for them. It's like, get to know your customer kind of case study. There's others. And so the third point is that a lot of what you learn as an analyst in business school is not necessarily practical day-to-day issues of running a company as much as it is analyzing companies to figure out what the problem is or how to do more of the successful thing. And so a lot of the skills you learn are how to create slide presentations, how to use spreadsheets to understand numbers, all those sort of gory business stuff, which is not what teaches you to be a leader. And business MBAs, and maybe they've gotten more into this now, but certainly in my lifetime, sort of missed the point about teaching leadership. And can you teach leadership and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, can you teach leadership, and who, what other ways besides being a leader can you learn how to be a leader?
Yeah, except by doing it. So, if you go and look at the ranks of really successful CEOs, you don't generally find people who've been a consultant. There are examples of people that sort of started out being a consultant, learned those kind of skills, and went, screw this, I'm going to go do something useful, and then ended up running companies. But particularly in the startup world, all of the skills that are required, even if we can't all agree on what they are, definitely are not what you learn in business school and as a consultant. So it's great to hire previous consultants as like strategic development or maybe marketing or other skills, well-defined skill sets where you can kind of see that they have that. But being the top dude, and I think the most famous example of this was Webvan, which I don't remember if there was a founder at Webvan or whether it was a bunch of VCs got together and said, "Hey, we should be doing this."
There was a founder. I remember it.
Yeah, but the guy who they hired was a guy from, I don't know if it was McKinsey or somewhere else, but who was a consultant who sounded great and gave great slideshows and stuff, but proceeded to bankrupt the company because he spent too much money.
Okay, so what is the first, in 1981 or 1982, what was the vibe of the early PC industry in terms of jobs, or any of the other guys doing it for for Lotus or VisiCalc? Did they ever hire consultants?
I'm sure they did, but they were not as executives. So I'm sure they hired consultants as they were growing, but there was a real bias against it. Remember that we've talked about this before. The early PC industry was led by a bunch of pseudo-revolutionaries, people just coming out of college and, still being idealistic in their political view, but hardcore nerds. And, those are the kind of people that don't look to consultants to find out what they should be doing. And it sort of sorted out that way. The people that, VisiCalc, Software Arts, was founded by two guys, one of whom, Dan Bricklin, who invented the spreadsheet, invented it in business school. He was sitting there looking at these huge paper spreadsheets and going, there's got to be a better way. And he figured out how to write a program on the Apple II called VisiCalc that allowed you to iterate and not have to write down things and erase them. And so there's a little fillip there, but I can't totally integrate. But so he figured out from business school how to create an application that was wildly successful and served a real specific need. Not sure that Bob Frankson went to business school. He may have been in graduate school because he was a dense coder. That's what he did, program for a living. I think he was working at somewhere else.
When did the term technical become such a big weight? I mean, I guess it had to be the entire time, right? Because in Silicon Valley, particularly in the 2010s and 2020s, everybody tried to become technical. All the boot camps, and everybody was just like hitting that really hard. Was that always a thing that existed in Silicon Valley?
So, if you take the entire span of Silicon Valley, the first 30 years, from Raytheon on, were big computers, not personal computers. Personal computers started in the 70s, so would that be right? Well, really, it was in the 60s and early 70s. And that was mostly chips, disk drives, component technologies that other people used to build computers. And the big computer companies were all on the East Coast. except for Hewlett-Packard, but Hewlett-Packard didn't become a computer company until later. So that had to be technical. So I'll give you a little, it might distract us, but IBM came up with this concept of a wild duck. You can look it up. And because IBM in its corporate wisdom understood there were certain people that were technical who would never be great executives. And they called them wild ducks. And they had a whole set of wild ducks that were scattered all over the company whose job was to mess with things and come up with brilliant technology ideas. And, so before the PC, that was it right there. Technical people really didn't run companies. And so Thomas Watson Jr. and what's his name at Digital Equipment, well, he wasn't there, but there was no real value placed on your technical expertise in the executive ranks, except as CTO or programmers, et cetera. When the PC started, those are all startups, so you didn't really have an organization, right? You didn't start with divisions and departments and different businesses. You're one thing. So the person who started the company, generally speaking, was the technology guy. Bill Gates, Steve Jobs. That changed over time. In fact, a lot of what people say about Steve Jobs is he wasn't really technical. He didn't know how to program and couldn't solder chips on a board, although Steve Wozniak could. Same with Larry Ellison. Charles Miner, that was his co-founder of Oracle and was the technical guy. And Larry was good enough, very much, and Steve and Larry were actually good buds for a long time, but they knew how to talk about things and point the way. They knew the right way to point. So anyway, I think I lost track of what I was saying.
So solder chips, Steve Jobs wasn't really technical. Larry Ellison wasn't really technical. This kind of brings me to the mind of like sales guys, because we're talking that consultants don't make good leaders or founders. Sales guys sometimes do. What is the sales guy in terms of 1980 to 2020?
Well, Steve Ballmer, who was, I think he graduated Harvard, and then Bill recruited him into Microsoft, but he was the salesman, but sales and marketing. Sales is what happens when you're selling to other companies. Right? You have to go to the company and you have to meet the people and you have to get them to decide to buy your thing. And then you have a relationship. And so that's sales. Marketing is when you've got thousands or millions of customers. You don't have to sell each one of them. You create a condition where they want to buy your product. And that's marketing. And there's a lot of crossover between this. People get confused, but that's sort of the essence of it. Some companies like Amazon are both marketing and sales, right? They're Amazon Web Services. There's a sales staff, but in the retail part and in the hardware part, that's all marketing. So, and that was one of the things about Amazon that Bezos was able to exist in both mindsets.
Wait, can you explain that? What do you mean Bezos was in both marketing and sales?
No, that he ran a company where both conditions were marketing-led and sales-led.
Oh.
So he understood intellectually the difference between the two.
Oh.
But he delegated. So the guy who's now CEO, Andy Jassy, is the one that created Amazon Web Services. And so Andy Jassy worked directly for Bezos when he came up with the idea, and Bezos said, okay, go do that. And Andy Jassy is the one that figured out the sales model for Amazon Web Services, which interestingly was originally pitched to startups.
Interesting. So Amazon in 2005 or 2006 started pitching directly to startups, And that was right before the startup boom, where people started making a bunch of startups. So that was how they got in early, even as a larger company, basically.
Well, the Amazon Web Services thing is fascinating because the thing that Andy Jassy proposed is that there was already a set of technologies that Amazon.com was using to good effect. So they were using it themselves. Talk about dog food. They were actually had built that system to serve Amazon, the retail operation. So
Brilliant.
then Jassy perceived there was an opportunity to start selling the same stuff to other companies.
Yeah.
And he started it by pitching. He started Amazon Web Services by pitching it to startups on the theory that that would not be hard to do. Startups would understand it, particularly tech startups, and they would adopt it easily without a lot of handholding or support or deep selling. And they used that as to create a base of usage that they then traded up and hired the staff to sell to major enterprises. The penultimate of which is that they created a new a separate instance of Amazon Web Services that was siloed for the CIA. So the CIA runs on Amazon Web Services.
Wait, Oracle must have been pissed off by that move.
Yeah, well, yeah. I think they sued each other over that one, but they're constantly in contention, Amazon Web Services and Oracle, for providing, whatever it is, databases or applications to the federal government.
Okay, so I'm going to go research where Oracle sued Amazon, all cases, because that sounds really interesting. Because
I think that might have been a DoD contract instead of the CIA.
JEDI. U.S. Departments of Defense Joint Enterprise Defense Infrastructure Cloud Contract. In 2018, they filed multiple legal challenges against the DoD over the $10 billion JEDI cloud contract, alleging the contract was unfairly structured to favor Amazon Web Services. Wow, it's catfights. They got catfights going on.
It's real money. $10 billion.
Yeah, interesting. Is that the only time? Well, but that doesn't involve the CIA.
No, the CIA, I don't think anybody contested the CIA because it was essentially done in secret.
Oh, man.
There was nobody else that could do that kind of infrastructure for the CIA because they demand real time. That's what they do for a living. The CIA sits here and watches what's going on in the world, and as much as it can, NSA also does something similar, but it's more about space and satellites and telecoms. And the CIA is constantly analyzing stuff, and the CIA analysts are the core employees of the CIA, the ones that are sitting there going, Israel just attacked Iran 2 nights ago, and I bet you the CIA knew what their targets were, and we're just waiting for them to push the button.
This gets into something really interesting about prediction, because the whole point of science is prediction, and the whole point of signals intelligence is prediction, predicting your enemy's move, predicting all sorts of global events and such. And it really gets to the heart of where we are, particularly with large language models, because large language models are also predictive, so they're also predicting the next token.
They're predictive in a much different sense.
Go into that. What do you mean?
Very hard, and I think this is the thing that people miss, is that large language models are trained on what exists.
Yeah.
So they can predict the next letter or next word or sentence, and they can construct something, but it has to have been done before for them to be able to do that. So the definition of intelligence and predictive abilities, it's like they're faking it because it's happened before. They can predict it again. But predicting a black swan, for instance, is inherently impossible. Right? Even people have a hard time predicting.
Do you think the CIA can predict a black swan?
I doubt it. Black swan almost by definition never happened before. Right? That's why it's black swan is the one black swan in the group of white ones.
Yeah.
You just don't know which one's going to be black.
Yeah.
At least I tried reading that book.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a good book.
Name of it, but yeah, I read a good part of it, but it tired my brain out.
Nobody could have predicted the way that he would go in terms of his online presence. He's become very aggressive towards anybody. I think I'm blocked by him. Okay, so really interesting stuff. We just kind of went down the path of, actually relates to what you just said about the prediction thing, is that MIT just released a paper 4 days ago called the SEAL framework, and the SEAL framework, SEAL, the first proof of concept for being able to update weights on an LLM. So the weights of the LLM are not able to be updated. Now they are able to be updated in this proof of concept that's probably not out there yet.
So what you're saying is that in real time you can modify an LLM to be responsive to more recent events than when it was constructed in the first place.
Because you can
That's
do that. You can do what you just said by having the LLM go search on the web, or putting a book into it, or doing all those different things. But it can't update the actual LLM that's being used. That framework that I just talked about, it allows it to do that with the weights, and the weights are a really important part, because the weights determine where the attention inside the neural network, how much they value each piece of information that's being queried, basically. And so now it's the first step into meta reinforcement learning, I believe, in which now the LLMs can teach themselves, which is also the Skynet sci-fi thing.
So SEAL stands for, it's hard to figure out how it does, but self-adapting language models.
How did the E get into adapting?
They're taking the SE and the AL.
Self-adapting.
People do that with acronyms just to come up with a pronounceable acronym. Otherwise, it would be SOM.
Can you say the words again? Can you say the words again?
Self-adapting language models.
Okay, got it. Mm-hmm.
It aims to overcome the limitation of static large language models by enabling them to adapt and learn from new information. That's kind of what I said. Depends how fast they do it. And, does that mean you don't need anything beyond 4.0, 4.0, whatever the hell they're calling it, because now it can learn? Do you need a new version? And weights and tokens, the interaction of them. Interesting thing. I'll have to go read more about it.
Yep. I did this as a part of our WhatsApp group where we have AI whispers, and I hate WhatsApp groups personally, but then once I went into my former company, I was told that I had to manage all of the knowledge management inside of each of the WhatsApp groups. And WhatsApp actually has the worst WhatsApp knowledge management. So and then I moved to Buenos Aires, where all the events are also happen on WhatsApp. So both of those happened. So then I became habituated to it, and then I started AI Whispers group. And so I started one specific subgroup inside of AI Whispers called the High Signal group. And so anybody who is the same as I was beforehand about not liking all the chitter chatter inside of WhatsApp groups, they can join that group and remain outside of all of the other groups so that they don't get overflooded with communications. So now I'm posting once every Sunday inside of that group with the most important thing that happened. This actually be a fun conversation to have with you, because the other contenders for it were OpenAI and Microsoft are currently renegotiating their contract. I thought it would be really fun to go interview the people at Microsoft who negotiated that contract, because that feels like science fiction. Like the fact that they had to think about what AGI is and try to make it somehow predictable.
They didn't actually think about it. That's the funny thing. They just said, "Oh, AGI," when it happens.
Yeah,
and they didn't check with it. They didn't.
The trigger is $100 billion. Once OpenAI gets to an evaluation of $100 billion.
Well, no, that's the financial trigger.
Yeah,
but if they achieve AGI before that, then so AGI was never defined in that agreement. Probably because they were sitting there going like, we can't figure out what this is, so we'll just call it AGI, and if we agree, then that's what happens.
Interesting. Let me see if I
So
can
your
pull it
video
up.
is freezing on a regular basis. Will Riverside be able to deal with that in the back end?
Yeah,
Or do
it should be
you?
fine. And I'm on my cellular network this time to try to test whether it's better than my stable network. And
Uh,
so we'll do a test, but I think it'll be fine. It's just uploading. I'll check afterwards, but we can continue on and not bore
okay.
the listeners with the technical details. Um, the AGI, the other thing is that Google now has Google AI in their search bar. And so instead you're typing on Google your normal search terms, they've also just added a little button where it takes you to Google AI with another chat
Mm-hmm.
GPT. And so that feels like a step against chat GPT. I wonder, like, do you think that Google now has their mojo back and that they're going to be able to compete?
I would guess not, but that's based on my pattern recognition for the last 50 years, in the sense that the incumbent never responds correctly or quickly enough to mute a challenge, particularly when the terms of combat have changed. So it's obvious what Google's doing, which is everybody goes to the search bar. I still do it. I forget because I go to Perplexity if I'm thinking about it, and I've become accustomed to that, and I do that more than I go to the Google. But I forget. Like I'll just look stuff up, and I'll see that they produce that. I haven't seen the. I'm just trying to see. So when I looked up MIT SAIL framework, Search Labs AI overview showed up.
Yeah, that's not it. Let me show
No,
you on
no,
this.
that's the thing that shows up at the top of their search results. Dive deeper in AI mode, but that's all the way down at the bottom in their top response.
Oh, interesting. They took it off. I just went to go
Well, no,
to
I
go.
just this is iOS, and I think it
Yeah.
might be different on computers. And then I've opened I'm in AI mode on Google. It looks like Google One. So MIT SEAL framework, put that in there. You have to put MIT because there you go. That's good enough. So is there a tab that says AI?
And that's what I mentioned is that they canceled it. So I checked a couple
They
days
did.
ago. I checked a couple days ago to make sure because it was right here in this area
Ah,
right here.
yeah.
Oh, that's
Right,
really
that's where
interesting.
they do image search there in that right-hand thing. That little camera icon is image search, which is pretty interesting.
So they must have taken it. It might be because yeah, no, that's really weird. That maybe that's a good answer to the problem is that Google just destroys everything. They put it out there and then they take it away.
Well, that's the product management problem, and it's interesting how many people I mention that to, who will go, "Yeah, oh, of course, yeah, that's Google." They don't know. They throw shit against the wall, and 80% of it doesn't work. And you know, there's no kind of intentional product management there. So they know what they're trying to accomplish before they bother people with a new product.
So
That's the way I think of it.
I got a question out of left field. So recently, I've come to the historical digging of where the corporation came from, and apparently, the first corporation was the church, and this was the first institution that outlived the people that were involved with it, particularly Jesus Christ, and sort of created over 1,000 years this kind of structure that outlived the people inside of it. Then the first corporation that was ever created was inside of the Netherlands, and with the Dutch East Indies Company was the first one. Then the British copied them. That's where the history gets a little hazy for me. But I've been trying to figure out what is a corporation, and so I want to talk about what you just mentioned. Google has this habit, has this thing that's unique to Google because of the knowledge inside of Google. But most of the people who started Google are now doing other things. So what is the difference between that and a human being? Like what, based on that whole thing that I just talked about, what is a corporation in your understanding? What does it do?
So the word corporation is derived from or led to incorporate.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
INC period. In the UK, it's limited LTD, and it's various things in different countries in Europe and elsewhere. So the first companies didn't have a corporate organization, right? This has all been created as a result of like first public market for company stock and then regulation of that, and it's layered up all over the time. But corporations have been defined by Supreme Court, at least here in the U.S., as entities that can be held responsible for their actions, but that are not people. So there's people and there's corporations, and they're treated differently, but they are both responsible for their actions. In a corporation, in a company, this is true whether it's organized as an LLC or an incorporated company, there's a fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders, that you're not supposed to act on your own behalf as a person versus acting on behalf of the corporation. So and there's a whole construct around this. And so I can't really trace it from Dutch East Indies or West Indies, can't remember which one it was, but to today, because there's a lot of intervening, like commercial law is a whole thing that happened first in England.
Interesting.
It was adapted in the U.S. So when you ask a lawyer, what do you practice? Some of them practice litigation. Some of them practice commercial law. That's most of the lawyers who do Silicon Valley or commercial lawyers. They understand how companies are supposed to organize and how they're supposed to make decisions and raise money and so on and so forth. There's subsets of each of those. But you have like environmental lawyers who are dealing entirely with issues regarding the environment and so on and so forth. So there's a bunch of different classifications of lawyers, but probably the biggest is commercial law because there are so many companies, and in theory companies can pay those people well.
And this is a really good point you just mentioned, because it's all about the regulation. It's all about property rights, because that's the whole thing, right? Is that England started with the property rights, and then we in the United States took those property rights and became a nation of entrepreneurs. And that's the whole bankruptcy laws are all because the United States started with this. What were we going to say?
Nation of entrepreneurs. The Brits were a nation of merchants. They started the whole idea, right? People created stores. They'd sell wine in the stores, or they'd sell dry goods or whatever. But the British economy was built on merchants. And anyway, so there's a kind of a lot of different ways you can go from there because they kind of lost it. And we might be in the process of losing it too. I'm about a third of the way into Apple in China. Have I mentioned that?
Yes, and I've been trying to get the book. I think I need to buy it because now I have a habit where instead of buying the book, I go get a book. I do pay for my books usually, but when I just want an answer out of the LLM from the book, I don't want to read the entire book. I go and I get the book through those various means in which I can get the book, a digital copy, so basically I couldn't find any digital copies for that book, so I have to buy it and read it.
It's recent enough and it's popular enough that I'm sure they protected it well. But it's really interesting because it posits that China raped Apple. Yeah. And as a result, are further ahead on manufacturing to such a degree now that we can't possibly reproduce it, and that Apple trained China. And so you sit there and you go like, here's a communist country, which for a while looked like it was going to become capitalist. Yeah. But then Xi Jinping got in there and stopped that. And but in the process, allowed Apple to avoid the rules that other companies had to play as long as Apple was training its workforce. And in the book, it says that Apple trained 28 million workers over a period of 10 years. Which is just, you think about it, like the churn inside those factories is tremendous. Frequently, those people work in a Foxconn factory making iPhones. They'll learn skills and they'll go work for somebody else. So the turnover in the Foxconn factories is close to 100% a year. And so That means 2.8 million workers a year got trained inside a Foxconn factory making iPhones and other Apple products. And now we don't have those people in the U.S. And in fact, the question is, does India? Because now India is actually bigger than China.
So when that talks about the institutional knowledge, that gets to the tweet that I sent you beforehand, which we can now dissect, which is there's somebody tweeted randomly that says that he knew that he watches all these companies and he knows the one guy who knows how the company really works, not the explicit knowledge that gets written down, but the implicit knowledge, knows Bob, knows Frank, knows all those people and all the connections between them and how they think and all those different things. And he says that as soon as that person leaves, that's when the company starts to go downhill. And so this gets into the same thing we were talking about the corporation. It's just like, it's a body of knowledge. Some of that knowledge is written down. Some of it is within people's heads and can't be written down. What's your take on all that?
The guy that you could refer to explicitly in that regard, which is how I reacted to it, is Tim Cook. Tim Cook was the guy who knew how Apple ran. And if Steve thought he had a choice, he really didn't, because Tim was the only one that could take over when he passed and make it bigger and bigger and bigger. And he was the supply chain guy. Can't remember what his title was before he became CEO, but maybe the chief operating officer. But that's normally the person who's expected to know where all the bodies are buried and how a company works. However, it's different in every company, and that I reacted to that tweet as like, well, that's pretty random because he didn't actually give any examples. And I can't come up with a pattern in my experience that supports that. An excellent company, and this has been addressed many times by different people, an excellent company spreads expertise around so that no one person is critical to its future.
Wait, okay, decentralization, because you just said something really important. Decentralization of knowledge, but also we've discussed how Apple is great because they're centralized their IT. And this is something I've been trying to figure out, because you centralization isn't, I mean, the people in the crypto always are talking about decentralization, and every time they do it, it's like a shibboleth where they kind of bow down to it and revere it and everything like that. But it's not about total decentralization. Some things are great for decentralizing, including all the information, and that's what the surveillance state is doing. Can you talk more about how? Do you agree? Do you agree that you want the databases centralized, but you want the knowledge decentralized? How else can I think about that?
So there's a technical layer to this, and then a practical layer to this. The technical layer is increasingly over the past 20 years, it's been less and less critical that data is centralized because the speed of communication between computers, i.e. databases, is so fast now that you can synchronize or keep data in sync across multiple databases and multiple locations.
Oh, interesting.
So what needs to be centralized becomes a smaller and smaller piece of the whole pie to none, actually, at this point. And
that's access control. I've been thinking about it as access control. Yeah, interesting. Okay, there's some. I can't figure out where.
Access. It's otherwise referred to as ACL, or access control list, a name that was generated by Microsoft when they were beginning to build their enterprise systems. An access control list is a list of who has access to various resources, whether it's a database or programs or whatever, and that exists as a separate database that itself needs to be updated when people come and go or change their domains, which has always been the bugaboo on an access control list, because if you're not paying attention, you leave people with access to stuff they shouldn't have. So that's just another database that needs to be synchronized and updated in real time. but it's a special purpose database that controls access to other resources. So, you look at it from an IT point of view. If you, as an enterprise, outsource everything so that you don't actually own any computers other than the PCs and devices that your employees use, you're then able to use services from multiple vendors, and there are separate companies that will keep track of which services you're using and route requests to the right resource. It's like, this is really, if an IT guy can operate at that level, that's pretty amazing. I'll give you the most recent example, and just because I know a lot about United Airlines, because I'm at 1,910,000 miles accumulated over the last 30 years. And I'm going to fly 90,000 worth to see what I get when I hit 2 million. They have recently, they brought on a guy like 4 years ago as their IT guy. I think, I don't know exactly how they organize it, but this guy figured out how to keep a single database of customers and apply it everywhere. So when you deal with the United app, your loyalty number is the organizing principle for everything, every interaction you have with United.
Yeah. Interesting.
It keeps track of your miles, but it also gives you real-time access to flight information, to your bags, and it's still weak at the edges, because when something goes wrong, it kind of loses track of you. But it's a pretty remarkable transformation this guy pulled off at United, and they now have best-of-class IT in the airline business. And you can compare it to American and Delta, who are the other two big American carriers. Well, yeah. Southwest is famous for having collapsed because their IT couldn't keep up. Anyway, so you can do it. My experience with Delta is they're number 3, and American's right behind United, probably paying a lot of attention to United and copying them. And it's really interesting how organizations absorb this knowledge and information and use it to compete.
So, very interesting point on that database. A lot of things came up. One thing I would like to know is how does a leader come in like that United guy and actually get that done? Does he just go and annoy people until they get the IT people to get it centralized? But there's another part I want to talk about more, which is so save that in your head, which is that number, the loyalty number, in terms of where we're headed in the internet, particularly now with LLMs, now the bots just attacking us. We need proof of human. And most people go somewhat dystopianly to, we need proof of human that can be tracked inside of a database. I don't think we need that type of proof of human. I think we need a different type of proof of human. The face, the biometrics,
you know what the orb.
Yes, exactly.
Sam
That's
Altman's
exactly.
orb.
I
read your eyeballs.
The most dystopian thing, and they're all like, "Oh no, you can trust it, It's but
totally
there's something
safe. Yeah.
off about
can't be
that.
Hacked.
Yeah.
Nothing can't be hacked.
Nothing can't be hacked. Exactly. So like that's the world everybody but that's the problem, is that each we have our phone numbers, but now bots can get phone numbers. We have all these different things, and each of those things is supposed to mark us as an individual. How long has that question been asked in the computer world?
I'm going to bring in my own experience here, but because I have a portfolio company called Device Authority. And as the name suggests, it's based on the idea of being able to definitively identify a device. So in the cybersecurity world, there are people and there are devices. And they've been treated basically the same, but you're familiar with the term IoT, Internet of Things. Things are devices, and so in IoT, I think I read there's 2 billion active users of iPhones. Well, identifying a person and identifying a device are two different things, but part of being able to identify a person is their devices and other data, like your social security number, or driver's license, or whatever. So the most reliable way to identify a human is by a concatenation of multiple things,
Yep.
multiple pieces of information. So one of the things that people do when you're opening a bank account, for instance, the last question they'll ask you after they ask your mother's maiden name or whatever else you've got, have you ever been associated with any one of these five addresses?
Yeah. Yep.
I've actually had to remember to answer yes on Grass Valley because I'm a cosigner on your loan. And so as far as the computers are concerned, that's something I've been involved with.
Yeah.
And I got that recently.
Yeah.
And guessed correctly that I should say yes.
Yeah.
So this is the way banks ascertain that you are who you are as an individual.
Interesting.
And is by concatenating multiple pieces of information from disparate sources. Device authority does something different in identifying a device, but it uses the device's signature, i.e., it has a certain amount of memory, or it has a certain kind of processor, or it has, whatever the device is made of, are multiple different things, and device authority concatenates those to identify that device separately from the exact same device right next to it that's actually slightly different because it has different characteristics. And so this is very hard because if there are 2 billion of these, there's probably another 2 billion of all the random little devices that control machines in factories and, that like your Wi-Fi router or, whatever, all of these devices, all these microprocessors in them. And to keep track of them, it has to be automated and everything needs to be done in real time, which is not how it's done right now. And this is device authority posited and set up their business model around the idea that everything would be real time in the future. Well, they started like 9 years ago, 10 years ago, and it's still not true. It's like, they go into a company that's manufacturing stuff, and they have, tens of hundreds, tens, whatever, thousands of devices inside a building, and they need to make sure they're all not vulnerable to being hacked. Yeah. They need to identify them, and then they need to update them over the air or through the wire. It's a really complicated thing, and it just takes forever for an organization to learn that.
And it seems like there'd be huge benefits for a factory to do all that, and I'm sure Apple does that, right? Apple does all of that.
Well, Apple makes all of its machines stuff at Foxconn, so you'd have to say Foxconn does that because they would own the devices that are in a manufacturing facility. You get into this stuff, it's actually really interesting. How do you make sure, because a lot of these microcontrollers that are used in factories have no memory, and they have a really simple processor. They have no access to the network.
Whoa.
So how do you update them in real time to make sure that they're not? Oh, and so this is a little side trip, but if you'll remember, it's never been proven, but people assume this was the CIA doing this, that they hacked the Iranian nuclear reactors, which have these centrifuges, and they inserted just a little fillip into the programming of the centrifuges, and they started going sideways, and they fell apart because the centrifuge has to maintain a perfect. And so, that was like 25 years ago. So it's like we haven't really made much progress. I don't know if the Israelis are doing it to they're just dropping bombs on them. But
I'm sure they're doing cyber stuff, and the Iranians might be doing good cyber stuff on everyone else too, because that's the crazy thing about the cyber threat is that you don't need a lot of people. You just need a small group.
Some really smart one, But Iran, I don't think, has developed. North Korea's got a really good hacking group. The Chinese are superior. We're good at it. The Russians are okay at it. So like, you have to have a culture that allows you to build that.
So there's are all these little devices running out there? They're just totally open, basically. That's probably a huuld threat vector.
Well, if they can't reach the internet can't reach them. They're somewhat secure by being what's called air gapped. So the problem is that you can't update them. So one that's 20 years old is still 20 years old, and the physical effort of updating that device is probably more than the value that you produce by doing it. So over time, they're being replaced by smarter devices. And as those smart devices are installed, are they being updated? And are they... So the most common, and I think this is probably true, the most common reason that you get service outages, like at Twitter or in an enterprise, is because there's software running on multiple machines, and it's supposed to be the same software, and one machine doesn't get updated when all the other machines are updated. Like there's a failure or a disconnect and it doesn't get updated, and then the hackers find that one machine and get in and take down the whole thing.
Yeah.
So the key thing in an IT organization, particularly once you started having thousands of servers or tens of thousands of servers, is how do you update them in real time all at the same time? How do you update 10,000 servers at the same instant? I can tell you, but it's pretty gory.
And I mean, that must be why Linux is good. That must be why Linux is good.
There's no inherent reason Linux is good in that particular domain, but because Linux still has to be updated all at the same time. Basically, in order to do this, you have to, across the 10,000 machines, you have to lift the operating system out of memory while the machine is running, update the operating system, and then put it all back down at the same time. Yeah. And that's technically very difficult. And the reason I know about that is because we tried to invest in a company that was spun out of MIT that was doing this for real-time updates. And instead of taking investment and building a cool company, they sold themselves before we could invest.
Oh, no.
But we had to learn. I mean, I watched Gilman grill these people. So how do you maintain integrity for every block on the drive? They answered it. I had no idea what they said.
Well, TDIF has started to join the conversation, and we probably don't want to subject our listeners to that.
Are you hearing that? Because I'm supposed to be here.
Yeah. No. Zoom. It's actually better that you're on your microphone for the actual sound. But yeah, I'm hearing it, and so we'll go ahead and close out for today. Thank you, listeners, and subscribe on Spotify and YouTube.